Mastering cultural humility development. Leadership's cultural humility is only as good as its willingness to confront its own biases. What is the organization's current understanding of cultural humility, and how does its leadership define it in the context of its mission, values, and practices? To develop cultural humility, an organization must first establish a clear understanding of what it means to embody this concept. This requires a deep exploration of the organization's current state, including its strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats related to cultural humility. Conducting a cultural humility self-assessment can help identify areas for growth and development. The self-assessment should involve a comprehensive review of the organization's policies, procedures, and practices to determine the extent to which they promote or hinder cultural humility. This review should consider the organization's 1. Hiring and retention practices. Do they prioritize diversity, equity, and inclusion? Are they free from biases and stereotypes? 2. Training and development programs. Do they include cultural humility training? Are they designed to promote self-awareness, empathy, and understanding of diverse cultures? 3. Community engagement and partnerships. Are they authentic and mutually beneficial? Do they prioritize the needs and perspectives of diverse communities? 4. Decision-making processes. Are they inclusive and transparent? Do they consider the impact on diverse stakeholders? 5. Feedback mechanisms. Are they in place to encourage open communication and address concerns or issues related to cultural humility? 6. Leadership accountability. Are leaders held accountable for promoting and modeling cultural humility? The self-assessment should also involve gathering feedback from diverse stakeholders, including employees, customers, clients, or patients, and community partners. This feedback should be solicited through various methods, such as surveys, focus groups, and one-on-one interviews. The goal is to gain a comprehensive understanding of how the organization is perceived in terms of cultural humility, and to identify areas for improvement. Once the self-assessment is complete, the organization should develop a comprehensive plan to address the gaps and areas for improvement identified. This plan should include 1. Clear goals and objectives. What does the organization want to achieve in terms of cultural humility? What steps will it take to get there? 2. Training and development programs. Design and implement training programs that focus on cultural humility, implicit bias, and structural racism. Ensure that these programs are tailored to the organization's specific needs and goals. 3. Policy and procedure revisions. Update policies and procedures to promote cultural humility and address any biases or stereotypes. 4. Accountability mechanisms. Establish clear accountability mechanisms to ensure that leaders and employees are promoting and modeling cultural humility. 5. Feedback and evaluation mechanisms. Develop feedback and evaluation mechanisms to assess progress toward cultural humility goals and objectives. 6. Community engagement and partnerships. Strengthen community engagement and partnerships to ensure that they are authentic, mutually beneficial, and prioritize the needs and perspectives of diverse communities. 7. Leadership development. Provide leadership development opportunities that focus on cultural humility, emotional intelligence, and inclusive leadership practices. Implementing cultural humility requires a long-term commitment to change and growth. The organization must prioritize ongoing evaluation and assessment to ensure that its efforts are progressing toward the desired outcomes. This includes 1. Regular feedback mechanisms. Establish regular feedback mechanisms to assess progress, identify areas for improvement, and make adjustments as needed. 2. Cultural humility metrics. Develop metrics to measure cultural humility, such as employee perceptions, customer satisfaction, and community engagement outcomes. 3. Continuous learning and improvement. Foster a culture of continuous learning and improvement, where employees feel empowered to suggest changes and improvements. 4. Celebrating successes and challenges. Celebrate successes and acknowledge challenges to reinforce the organization's commitment to cultural humility. Ultimately, developing cultural humility requires a transformative approach that involves a deep examination of the organization's values, policies, and practices. By conducting a comprehensive self-assessment, gathering feedback from diverse stakeholders, and developing a clear plan to address gaps and areas for improvement, the organization can establish a strong foundation for cultural humility and operational excellence. As I sat in the conference room with the leadership team of a prominent healthcare organization, I couldn't help but notice the palpable sense of frustration and disconnection. They were struggling to move the needle on diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, despite their best efforts. It was as if they were trapped in a cycle of good intentions, but lacking the spark that would propel them toward meaningful change. I asked them to describe their organization's current state of cultural humility. The room fell silent. Glances were exchanged, but no one seemed willing to take the first step. It was as if they were waiting for permission to speak the truth. One brave soul finally broke the silence. To be honest, we're not even sure what cultural humility means in practice. We've had diversity training, but it feels like a check-the-box exercise. We want to do better, but we're not sure where to start. I nodded, sensing their genuine desire for growth. Let's explore this together, I said. Cultural humility is not about achieving a destination. It's a mindset, a posture, a commitment to continuous learning and improvement. I drew a diagram on the whiteboard, illustrating the interdependence of three essential elements: self-awareness, empathetic curiosity, and systemic accountability. These elements are not separate entities. They inform and enrich each other. As you cultivate self-awareness, you'll become more curious about the experiences of others, which will, in turn, highlight the need for systemic accountability. Together, we delved into each element, exploring how they could be operationalized in their organization. We discussed the importance of creating safe spaces for honest dialogue, where employees felt empowered to share their stories and concerns. We examined how to integrate empathetic curiosity into their daily practices, from active listening to inclusive language, and we strategized ways to embed systemic accountability into their policies and procedures, ensuring that every decision was made with the well-being of all stakeholders in mind. As we worked through the diagram, the atmosphere in the room began to shift. The team's body language relaxed, and their voices grew more confident. They started to see cultural humility not as an add-on, but as an integral part of their organization's DNA. I sensed their growing ambition, their desire to not only improve their own practices, but to set a new standard for the industry. I saw the originality of their thinking as they began to connect the dots between cultural humility and patient care, recognizing that the two were inextricably linked. As our time together drew to a close, I shared a personal anecdote from my own journey. I once worked with a manufacturing plant that was struggling to reduce defects. We focused on empowering the frontline workers, giving them the autonomy to identify and solve problems. Defect rates plummeted, and productivity soared. But what struck me most was the transformation in the workers themselves. They became more confident, more curious, and more committed to their work. Cultural humility is not about achieving a certain level of diversity. It's about creating an environment where everyone can thrive. The team nodded, their eyes sparkling with newfound understanding. They knew that this was just the beginning of their journey, but they were no longer alone. They had each other, and they had a shared vision of operational excellence, rooted in cultural humility. As I packed my things to leave, I felt a sense of hope and expectation. This organization was poised to make a significant impact, not just within their own walls, but in the lives of their patients and the broader community. They had taken the first step toward a more just and compassionate world, and I was honored to have been a part of it.